I'm Ivana. I'm Italian. I have a strong Italian accent, but I'm, although privileged, still a migrant in France. I live in Strasbourg, where the Council of Europe is based, and this is the international organization that hosts the ICC program, which is a capacity building program targeting local authorities worldwide. It started in the Council of Europe as a pilot project back in 2008, and it has developed since, mainly based on analysis of cities' practices enriched with the human rights standards that the Council of Europe promotes in the continent. So just a quick reminder, the organization covers 46 member states since a few weeks now, since the Russian Federation has been expelled. But the Intercultural Cities program has a very wide membership that goes beyond the European continent. We have 155 members in all the continents, and the common point among them is that they see integration, and this since 2008, I must say they were very pioneer in this, as not only the matters of migrants, but a goal of the society as a whole. And they see integration not only as being about rights. Of course, they are fundamental. The access to rights has to be granted, but it's also the results of human attitudes and behaviors that provoke social connections, mixing contact and interaction across diversities, and ultimately build social trust. And the reason why with Joanna we decided I would speak rather about gentrification is because social trust builds across diversities in the public space. And that's why urban planning is a fundamental aspect of cities and local authorities that want to promote intercultural integration as a model. And gentrification is definitely not a phenomenon which is bad per se, but which is often accompanied by very negative impact, to the point that Tom Slater, professor of urban geography at the University of Edinburgh, used to define it as the spatial expression of economic inequality. So it has an impact which is greater on vulnerable groups, but we try to address it as a problem and a challenge for the society as a whole. Joanna, you can go to the first real slide. Yes, so as I said, the main characteristic of the intercultural integration model is that it considers that integration is not only about rights, it has an interdisciplinary nature, it involves many areas at the local level, but also in other levels of governments. It requires the cooperation of many city departments, coordination and cooperation of policies, and involving also all levels of government, so local, from local to regional and national level. It is based on three main pillars: equality, which is usually mainly grounded on normative actions, so belonging to the national and regional level, but still to make it real, not only on the paper, it still requires action also from the local level. What we call the diversity advantage, which is a state of mind that we promote across all policymakers and should be there at all levels of governments. And this means embracing diversity without fears, promoting it really with convincing discourse as an asset through policymaking that build an advantage for the society as a whole, while addressing the needs of vulnerable groups. We don't deny these needs, but we try to make the vulnerability last as for the shortest possible period. The angle should be to devise these policies from the angle of the potential of migrants, how you can unlock the potential of diversity, and you can do this through empowering individuals and communities. And finally, there's a third ingredient, which is the most authentic of the intercultural integration model, which is mixing and intercultural interaction, and this operates mainly at the local level and in the public space. Joanna, can you please pass to the next? So I'm going fast and simplifying, but for the sake of time, I think it's good, and then you can ask questions if you want. A city which proclaims itself intercultural must therefore be inclusive in all its aspects. Inclusion is the end goal of intercultural integration policies, and this means putting in place an inclusive governance, inclusive institutions and public services that take account of the diversity of the community they are designed for and mirror this diversity among the civil servants, the public staff, the public officers. It's also a city that adopts a holistic approach to positive diversity management. As I said before, not only addressing individual needs, but empowering the community as a whole and making the majority understand that there are benefits from diversity and that they can enjoy these benefits, the benefits brought by diversity. And then, of course, it's a city that promotes interaction in the public space, and this means enabling the conditions that allow for the expression of plural identities in the public space through the diversity of heritage and cultures of the residents, and by fostering a sense of a shared past on which to build a common future. And the development of a shared understanding and vision of future is what require more time and also more efforts into building opportunities for positive and everyday encounters in the public space across differences, which means making available sufficient inclusive meeting places for both organized and spontaneous encounters. And that's why it's very important for an inclusive urban planning to be aware of the danger of gentrification when economic interests of a private stakeholder feed into this process, which, as I said, is not bad per se, but it can become very bad if it's not managed well. Next, please. So there are several potential negative effects of a gentrified urban regeneration, especially on migrants and on lower income residents, effects that may be even devastating. If the city considers them, prevents them to happen, they can ensure that the policies and practices for the urban regeneration are designed to protect the essence of the neighborhoods, the diversity of the neighborhoods, and also, by effect, also those who are more at risk of housing vulnerability and displacement. Because gentrification, when it's negative, it has a very clear pattern. First, it creates a rent gap, and this rent gap affects affordability of housing, and this can result into the physical or visual displacement of original residents until their exclusion and segregation. And as you can see, all this affects or even contradicts all the principles that an intercultural city commits to promote. And preventing gentrification, that's why I put the small virus there, it became even more important in the pandemic, during the pandemic, and now that we are maybe, hopefully, near to leave the post-pandemic period, because marginal businesses have been the more exposed to the risk of closure and bankruptcy. There have been a lot more stressed sellers and commercial property among migrant populations. And this is, of course, a huge potential for investors to buy discounted property in diverse neighborhoods, so increasing the negative effect of gentrification. And on top of that, we see the increasing inequality. High-income people, like us, to be honest, continue to work from home. There's a renewed demand for larger houses, for better quality of life, which means that the properties in depressed areas with good housing stock become targets of gentrification. And indeed, there are needs of the more most vulnerable, which are there and even more evident now. They need safety for movement, which is essential for the workers who provide key goods and services to communities, and they don't have this. So this may be walking, cycling, other public transportation which is free or economic. They need to access food and essential services safely, and they need also, we all need as a community, public spaces that contribute to mental, physical, and immunological health. The next slide, please. So if we apply the 3 core principles of interculturalism to preventing gentrification, I will start from diversity advantage first. This means in practice undertaking positive action to preserve the diversity of places and public space as an asset. It's about public discourse that contributes to improving the image of marginalized neighborhoods so they don't become a target, recognizing and valuing the diversity of individuals and groups that are settled in this area. And this will also promote a sense of proudness of belonging to this area. And the framework of regeneration, which respects and sustains the plurality of identities and cultures of the local residents, and which integrates any urban change within the social fabric, not against the social fabric. And this is also something that has a very strong and positive impact on sense of belonging, which is always promoted when the cities take steps to build effective participatory processes that allow the residents to co-produce the policies. In the field of housing, it's very important to have participatory mechanisms for distributing funds, encouraging community-led governance model for human regeneration. And these authorities will be the best equipped for facing the negative consequences of gentrification, and I would say even to prevent it from happening. Equality also enters into the vision because the city must place value on the economic equality of the residents and recognize their right to housing and belonging to a place. And this means, again, a strong focus on participatory mechanisms in all stages of the urban regeneration process, starting from very simple things like listening and learning from the everyday lives of the citizens to draw the picture of the neighborhood in which the regeneration process has to intervene. And the participatory governance and leadership will be the final step of the process. And this can be done by awarding greater responsibility and control over the public space governance to the users, to the end users, and by engaging with all the diverse sectors. And then, of course, it means equality always means this in all sectors, strong efforts for non-discrimination, in this case, in physical, social, and visual access to the space, and of course, equal access to the activities that are carried out in the public space, and effective monitoring mechanisms. And finally, it's important for the city to communicate that the equality message is not only for the minorities, but also for the majority. And then there's the third element, which is interaction. And this is, you can see it quite evidently in the public space. It means promoting the benefits of intercultural identities within the neighborhoods and encouraging trust so that there is this social mixing with no imposed barriers by welcoming all range of users to use an inclusive public space. Next, please. And actually, that's my last slide. We have evidence of trends at local level of ways and means to prevent and reduce gentrification. And the first step is, of course, to manage the rent gap and affordability in residential area. And you do this by increasing the supply of public housing, it has been mentioned before, and provide a mix of housing tenures to improve affordability through new building and purchase, and through specifying the level of affordable housing provision in all new schemes. And then something that also has been mentioned by the IOM colleagues is to encourage public-private partnership and cooperative models for participatory housing. There are some cities that have developed housing provision laws, for instance, in which housing companies expand their housing units geared towards a stronger emphasis on low-income households. And there are several mechanisms for regulating the private sector to reduce speculation and introduce rent controls, and sometimes also in partnership with private actors such as Airbnb, for instance. And then a bet on ensuring access to affordable transport, because the property near transport interchanges is more likely to be gentrified first. So it's very important to increase investments there. And then a second set of measures concern preventing the displacement and protecting the tenants. And here you have excellent example in Berlin with the careful urban renewal, which is a policy to set up special zones where to preserve the social composition of existing residents. There are a lot of examples on managing touristification, even by promoting sustainable tourism, and protecting local businesses by ensuring that the rents and the rates remain affordable for them. And then strengthening participatory processes. I said it, I explained it before already, but it's very important, I insist there, to promote a participatory governance in areas undergoing urban change and manage the privatization of the public space, recognizing the need for balance between the newcomers and the interest of the local residents. And finally, I come back to the sustainable tourism, because this is something that many cities are starting now, and they are doing this in a participatory manner, involving the residents, and it has a strong impact also it's very successful also in changing a negative image of a neighborhood into something positive and a value for the society as a whole. We have a policy brief and a policy study on the matter if you are interested to see more about what the cities do, and I will put the links in the chat now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ivana. It was very complete. What resonated a lot with me was about this capacity of cities, to be able to listen to the stories, because this capacity of listening to the stories would give a picture, an accurate picture, a granularity that they had no access to, which is fascinating, right? Because cities have a lot of data. So I heard recently that stories are data with a soul. I like that. But they're also instrumental into shaping policies that have huge impact, because that's what it's all about. So thank you so much for this very comprehensive presentation, and we'll have more questions at the end as well. I'm now going to give the floor to Eleleonora Milazzo. Eleonora, would you like me to share your presentation, or would you like to share it yourself?
I've got many animations, so if you don't mind, I'm gonna try and go ahead and show it myself, not to...
Go ahead, perfect.
Right.
Okay. Don't forget to introduce yourself. You'll do it better than me because I'm really crap at introducing people.
No, not at all. So I'm going to share my screen now. Let me know if you see it all right. Good. So yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eleleonora Milazzo. I'm a researcher at King's College London and a consultant for IOM, working together with Rossella and Miriam on Includ-EU. So as part of my work with IOM, I was actually in charge of drafting the briefing on housing inclusion that Rossella started presenting, and that you can find also in the chat. This was very much a collaborative effort involving all the project partners. In fact, and you are going to see that there is a lot of input feeding into this work. So I'm gonna speak for the next 10 to 15 minutes to also tell you a bit about the main findings of the briefing, in fact, as well as some practical examples. To begin, the main question that we tried to answer in the briefing was how we can improve access to adequate and affordable housing, specifically for third country nationals in the 6 countries involved in Include-EU. And the key and what we did essentially was to first of all analyze the housing context with a specific focus on third country nationals in the 6 countries. And then try and learn about innovative good practices on the ground, and finally formulate policy recommendation on how to bring about more holistic housing policies. And this is a term that has come up already a couple of times in our discussion. So the key findings, I'm going to just spoil you the reading of the briefing, but I urge you to still read it because you will find more information there. The key findings of this analysis were, first of all, that access to adequate housing is increasingly challenging for people living in the EU, and this regardless of nationality. But it is also true that third country nationals are particularly overburdened by housing cost and struggle to access the private real estate market due to increasing unaffordability, discrimination, barriers to service access, the other factors that Rossella and Ivana were also mentioning. So what is really key is to try and understand how to develop measures that can contrast inequalities affecting third country nationals in this field. And the key and the 5 key policy recommendations that we formulated in this respect are, first of all, ensuring financial and material support, supporting collaborative housing solutions. Then the third one, developing trust-based housing networks, and I'm going to go into detail about what this means. Contributing to urban regeneration, which has been covered, I think, in a very, very interesting and stimulating way by Ivana, and then finally addressing special needs. So let me just illustrate each of these recommendations with some practical examples as well. So first of all, as to ensuring financial and material support, what we found is that this is actually key. This is the first step. It remains a necessary tool, especially when it comes to meeting installation cost, first installation cost, and to secure an apartment for rent, particularly in urban areas. And as we already discussed, multi-level partnerships are particularly fruitful in this respect when it comes first to offer temporary accommodation, so that's material support, but also provide tools to approach and navigate the private real estate market or public housing. And really, so taking a holistic approach when it comes to material support to housing inclusions means ensuring that we address not only housing, but also other areas of broader social inclusion, which means job placement, access to services, healthcare, language training, education, etc. Interesting examples, which I'm sure many of you know about, is the Helios pilot integration project in Greece, which is, I think, a good way to illustrate how all these things come together, trying and propose a holistic approach to housing inclusion in the context of Greece. With, of course, an important role, especially for local and regional stakeholders, but also international partners. Another examples of ways to provide financial and material support for housing inclusion is Luca's housing agency in Italy, which was established by a group of municipalities in Tuscany, and essentially serves as a real estate agency matching housing supply and demand on the private market for all local residents who may need and benefit from such a service, with the financial support of municipalities, providing a guarantee fund and a management fund for the apartment that are rented through the mediation of the foundation. So really an interesting examples of financial and material support that is really, I guess, to the point. Then of course, in the briefing, you will find more details about other examples. For example, support for beneficiaries of international protection in Slovenia. So in continuity with the reception system, really. And the example of a new house, Inclusion Polka, an initiative of the municipality, again, with material and medical assistance providing to vulnerable families and individuals, irrespective of their country of origin. And then I think it's interesting to reflect in the context of what is happening and the measures that have been put forward in the recent European Commission communication on welcoming those fleeing the war in Ukraine. When it comes to financial support, there is an array of fund that is going to be used. So the AMIF and Cohesion Policy Fund for initial housing solution. I think this temporal distinction is important here. And then long-term accommodation through the European Regional Development Fund, but also support to community-based accommodation initiatives through the European Social Fund. So here again, when it comes to financial and material support, there's a temporal, a time dimension that we should also think about. Then coming to the second key point, supporting collaborative housing solutions. What we found based on the example that were brought to us by project partners is that collaborative housing solutions are particularly successful in promoting inclusion, because they, first of all, meet immediate housing needs, immediate material needs, but also because they foster social inclusion. They facilitate social mixing and build also long-term housing autonomy. So a good example here is Auntie Jess's house in Turin in Italy. So this is really a comprehensive response to different local housing needs established by the municipalities of Turin together with civil society organizations, and it's essentially building a condominium with apartments for different groups of people who might need accommodation for different reasons. And third country nationals are included both as temporary tenants in this building, but also as mentors, foster families for newcomers into the building. So really a good example of the kind of holistic approach that we have been describing so far. Another good practice that you will find in the briefing is Parma's Tandem project in Italy, Parma. It was a co-housing and social networking project which offered accommodation in a co-housing mode to both young Italians and international protection holders, as well as professional training, active citizenship activities, and so on. So really building bridges between people from different backgrounds, but with very much in common, as in this case, young people living in Italy. So the third point that we make in the briefing is that it's important to develop trust-based housing networks. What we found is that, in fact, this is this is by far the most effective way to find accommodation for people coming, especially from outside the EU. And this is because trust-based networks, which are very often established informally, narrow down perceived differences, facilitate the provision of material guarantees, including financial ones, and strengthen the positive effects of material housing support, essentially finding accommodation through people who know you or trust you remains by far the most effective instrument to bring down distrust, discrimination, and so on. And I think we should reflect on the fact that so far the response, the very grassroots response in solidarity with Ukrainian refugees has been very much based on this kind of networks. This is going to be supported financially as well by the European Union through the new Safe Homes initiatives, but I guess it begs the question of whether these mechanisms, these very informal, trust-based ways of solving the housing crisis is really a long-term solution or not, whether structural initiatives are needed. And then again, hospitality networks, a very good example is the hospitality network in Barcelona, trying essentially to bring, to match migrants who look for accommodation with mentors, buddies, accompanying them. And yeah, so the fourth point, I think this has been covered in very interesting ways. The findings that you will find in the briefings are very much in line with what Ivana was saying. So the goal here is to really invest more on depopulating areas, requalify unused or decaying real estate, and try and really create win-win solutions that both revive local communities, but also avoid concentration in big cities, create opportunities to revive the local fabric, if you want, and this is of course possible in small cities, as it is the case for this project in Catalonia in Spain. With the support of small towns and relocation and the promotion of access to housing and labor markets by avoiding concentration in big metropolitan areas in the region. But it's also possible, of course, in bigger metropolitan areas. So I think Rome, Porto Fluviale Rec House, it's a new project, a very interesting one, it's a project of the municipality of Rome to regenerate an occupied building made famous by the work of street artist Blue, the one in the picture. This is a listed building in the municipalities, and it has been occupied for over for about 20 years by people from different countries, including families. And the project now is to co-design together with the residents in this building its renovation, to make it an inclusive space, and one that can that the whole neighborhood can benefit from. And then our last recommendation, and I will conclude here, is addressing special needs. So as much as it's important to devise housing inclusion initiatives and policies, they are inclusive and do not create or reinforce segregation or stigmatization, it's also important to address any special need or additional difficulties that some groups of people may encounter in securing adequate accommodation. And so this is why we suggest that housing inclusion initiatives should always be targeted and empower people regardless of the conditions they face. So a very interesting example of how challenging but extremely important this might be is Mucia Shelter for Integration and Care. This is a shelter established again here through a partnership by the government of Murcia and NGOs and civil society organization, which offers housing and healthcare to adult migrant men and women who suffer from temporary illness and cannot afford to pay rent or to cover their housing expenses. So really an important examples of how diversity and so complex the housing needs might be. So just very briefly to wrap up, what we suggest in the briefing is again the importance of providing holistic housing support across a range of different areas, establish multi-level partnerships as it has been mentioned, but also engage with third-country nationals in project design and implementation. I think we're going to hear more about this in the next parts, and adopt far-reaching measures that benefit larger segments of the population, especially urban regeneration projects, and targeted interventions within a broader integrated approach to housing and social inclusion. I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to the discussion and any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eleonora. And thank you for taking the time also to describe the good practices. I think it really illustrates also the previous presentations, and it brings granularity. It brings, we need always to go through these different levels, right? We need the commonalities, the general recommendations and so on. And then we need the illustrations. We need to know how it's done on site. And we need so this description that was very helpful. As a first step, we're going to Tuscany first to hear about a new model to tackle temporary housing needs. So it will be about temporary housing, collaborative, and then during this time, Elisa will explain a few words on why this video was actually prepared, and then the next presentation will will be another example, which you may or may not know yet, of Singer Global. I'm super excited. I want everything at the same time. Stay with us. We're going to show the presentation, the video. I tested it this morning, so it works.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Just a sec. I need to be careful about the sound. Otherwise, you don't hear the sound.
Okay.
Mi chiamo Baba Sissoko.
So I just heard that you can't see the video, so I need to check again. Sorry. Here. Let's try again. Do you see the video?
Yes.
Mi chiamo Baba Sissoko, ho 28 anni, vengo dal Mali. È cambiato le tante cose. In questo momento io vivo da solo, ho trovato lavoro di forno, abito qui in Certallo e a me mi piace Italia, davvero. Sono indipendente.
Toscana è la sede regionale dell'ANCI, che è l'Associazione Nazionale dei Comuni Italiani. Il nostro ruolo è quello di accompagnare i territori nella definizione di quelle che possono essere le linee guida per una programmazione integrata delle politiche e dei servizi orientati all'inclusione. Il territorio dell'Empolese Valdarno Valdelsa rispetto al tema dell'abitare è stato scelto perché le caratteristiche del progetto EVAI ci sono sembrate particolarmente significative per coinvolgimento dei destinatari, attivazione delle reti territoriali, rapporto con i servizi, quindi ci è sembrato un progetto su cui potesse innestarsi effettivamente una sperimentazione.
Nella nostra esperienza abbiamo cercato di unire due aspetti, la parte lavorativa e la parte abitativa. In alcune situazioni questa esperienza è stata positiva perché è stato il datore di lavoro stesso che ci ha aiutati nella ricerca.
Maurizio mi aiutò, gli ha trovato lavoro, poi dopo io cercavo la casa, ma da solo non è facile, non è trovato da solo, perché dipende di persone conosciute e fiducia come integrazione. Loro mi hanno dato la mano e ho trovato la casa.
Nel percorso di autonomia e di integrazione di Baba ha avuto un ruolo essenziale il datore di lavoro. Pasquale ha dato non solo la possibilità a Baba di lavorare all'interno della sua azienda, ma lo ha anche aiutato in quella ricerca di un appartamento che è così difficile.
Io lavoro di panificio e dentro di panificio ci sono tante cose. Si prepara le paste e i grissini. Un lavoro qui che ho fatto prima 6 mesi, poi dopo è contratto normale. La casa mia dove lavoro è vicino. Sono affitto e pagare luce e gas. Noi siamo due e io e col mio amico, si chiama Barai.
L'esperienza con Baba io la inserisco all'interno dei progetti riusciti. Rispetto alla collaborazione con il progetto Includ, io direi che è stata finalmente la realizzazione di un lavoro di rete di cui spesso parliamo ma che difficilmente riusciamo a realizzare.
Fare rete significa far dialogare in maniera positiva ed efficace il sistema dei servizi territoriali con il terzo settore, con le organizzazioni che sul territorio realizzano progettualità, sperimentano pratiche innovative e possano contribuire sicuramente a definire la programmazione integrata delle nostre zone, delle nostre società della salute.
Va bene, a posto Certallo. A me mi piace Italia perché sono indipendente, sono lavoro, sono come i diritti.
Elisa, would you like to say a few words on the video, why it was shot?
Sure. So hi everybody, I'm Elisa. I work as a communication assistant at IOM Italy, and I have supported in the making of this video. So the video is the first of a series of 6 videos, plus a general one, that will present the pilot projects implemented in each country involved in the Includ-EU project. So the video component is actually a part of the communication strategy of Includ-EU, which also includes a project website, social media pages, so Facebook and Twitter, and a quarterly newsletter. I'll leave you all the links in a second. So we shot this video in Tuscany, where our partner Anci Toscana, together with its local network, implemented an innovative pilot initiative on social housing to respond to temporary housing needs of migrants in a vulnerable situation. So the protagonist of the video, as you've seen, is the story of Baba, a young man who arrived in Italy from Mali a few years ago and showed immediately a proactive attitude and a great desire for autonomy. So he learned Italian, and thanks to the important support of the strong network of local authorities and services of the territory, he managed to become more and more independent. So he found a job in a bakery and rented an apartment in the historic center of Certaldo with his friend Baragi. So Baba's successful stories highlights 2 significant aspects: the importance of local networks and the strict connection between labor integration and housing inclusion, and the independence that it brings. So as for the first one, this story shows very well how an integrated approach to housing and social inclusion is the basis for any action in this sense, but it also requires more targeted measures to be as effective as possible. Regarding the connection between labor integration and housing inclusion and the resulting independence, Baba's story shows very clearly how his employment at the bakery was very important in finding a private flat where he could live with his friend. So it is also important to note how this step has a positive effect, both for him and for the community of Certaldo that welcomed him. So this is just a very quick overview of the video that we have seen. And as promised, I'm sharing with you the links to our website, social media, here we go, and a newsletter, and to the video on our website. So I hope that you enjoyed it and that you will continue to follow us. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Elisa. And I think you are illustrating also something else that we don't always speak about, is the need for communication. So you articulated it, explained how it works, but it's also always this story about doing the work and saying what is happening, how it works, not only the results, but also the process, which also will help others to get inspired or reinvent differently similar practices. I don't think we see the links, so it would be useful to give the exact links.
Yes, sorry, I'll do it again.
No worries at all. You know, I do all the mistakes, so don't worry. Thanks a lot. Our next speaker is Fatima. I need to check. I need to read your name. That's why I had a second. So Fatima Jalani, CEO of Singa Global. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for the patience. We're running a bit late, but you have all the time that we have decided you had. So you don't need to rush. Your story is super interesting, and we want to hear it.
All right. Well, first of all, Joanna, thank you, and thank you to the Assembly de Région d'Europe for the invitation to speak with such an interesting panel today. A panel of women speaking about policy. It's not something that I see quite often, so bravo. So I'll go ahead and share with you really quickly my screen. I think you have to give me the option. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So All right, I'm gonna hide you guys a bit, and then yeah. All right. Okay, so just to introduce myself, I am the COO of Singa Global. I'm also a European enthusiast because, I mean, I think any regional organization or government that has the slogan of united in diversity, well, I think it's an ideal that I adhere to and want to defend. And I'm also a child of immigration, and I say that because it really affects my analysis on how I see this issue. Okay, Singa, who are we? What do we do? A lot of people, I mean, I don't know to what extent people know us. Sometimes I'm surprised and I hear people tell me, oh, I've been following you for years. And then sometimes they're like, what are you? Who are you? So I'm just gonna do a little presentation. Singa is the first European network of innovation around migration and entrepreneurship. Since 2002, Singa has been creating opportunities for locals and newcomers. We use the word newcomers for anyone who's exiled to meet and create professional, social, and entrepreneurial projects. Because we've understood that, and I think this has come out in everyone's presentation, that any newcomer who is isolated will not be able to integrate society. And so this started first as a citizens movement. Today we encompass 80,000 members, 80,000 people who are a part of our community, 1,000 entrepreneurs. We're present in 7 countries and 18 cities, and hopefully we're growing. Okay, just really quickly, I want to explain our methodology because it's important for what I want to explain later for our housing program. But today we have what we call 3 weapons of mass cohesion. A big title. What do? We first started with community organizing. Why? Because, as you know, most of the time when newcomers arrive, they lose not only their families, their homes, they also lose their social capital. And so today, what we try to do via Singa is give them access to a new social capital so they could connect, meet with people, and also ensure a certain level of integration. I use the word integration right now. I don't really like to use it a lot. We prefer inclusion because it seems like integration is one-sided, whereas we think that newcomers also bring a lot to the society. So it's a give and take on both sides. Entrepreneurship. We believe that migrants are well positioned, newcomers are well positioned to become entrepreneurs. Because they face the challenges that most entrepreneurs face. They face uncertainty, they face the unknown, they have to have patience, a lot of patience. I don't know, I mean, myself, when I had to ask for a carte de séjour in France, it was a nightmare. So I can't imagine what they have to go through. They can adapt, they're resilient. These are all things that entrepreneurs need. And the reason at Singa why we focus on entrepreneurship is because oftentimes newcomers are stigmatized in society when they're looking for a job. And so we try to overcome the resistance to inclusion via entrepreneurship. And innovation. So we kind of have an innovation studio in which we developed our housing program actually, and other types of programs. But we have this innovation studio because we realize that states or certain organizations don't always take a constructive approach, a sustainable approach. to the migration crisis. And so we have a motto. We say we like to prove by doing. And so we just want to show people what the possibilities are to allow them to see beyond the structures that we have today, to realize that migration is not a problem. It's actually an opportunity, and it can be an opportunity if we change our mentality on how we approach it. Johanna, don't hesitate to tell me if I need to speed up, okay? All right, so to make that transition, oh wait, no, for some reason it skips. Oh, here we go. Okay, so today, what is our offer? We want to ensure impact, and we want to ensure a systemic change, and inclusion, as I think you all have demonstrated in your presentations. It's a multidimensional issue that needs a holistic approach. And so today, via community development, we want to ensure social and cultural inclusion, and we do that through workshops and events, workshops to put locals and newcomers in contact, and events to create awareness and inspiration around topics of immigration and interculturalism. We want to ensure economic inclusion, so via entrepreneurship, and so we do that by developing incubators across Europe. We're the biggest migrant entrepreneurship network in Europe, and so this means developing pre-incubation, incubation, and acceleration programs for anyone who wants to, any newcomer who wants to develop a project, or anyone who wants to propose a project that tackles the migration phenomenon. And innovation, as I explained, this innovation studio where we developed J'accueille, Calm in Brussels, and other digital solutions trying to create this social cohesion. And that tries to tackle structural inclusion. What I mean by structural inclusion is that if we could have as much social and economic inclusion, but if our institutions do not adapt and change, we're always newcomers are always going to face hurdles and barriers and so on and so forth. And I think, like, for every citizen, you guys talked about human dignity, but every citizen, I think, to have the possibility to pursue their happiness, to have the possibility for human development to go far and the potential that they could reach, they need to have a home, they need to have a job, and they need to have a community. And that's the basis. So that's the ecosystem that we want to create, and we want to expand that capacity in all those areas. So, our citizens housing program is called J'accueille and Calm in Belgium. It was launched in 2015, and basically it kind of takes our DNA and focuses on this really the community building aspect, putting locals and newcomers together on equal footing to ensure a certain level of inclusion and to develop social cohesion in society. We are not an emergency response to the housing crisis. This is more like a trampoline towards inclusion, towards their integration into society. And so so we launched this in 2015, and why we launched this was because obviously there's a need for it, and we see that every day. And also because there was actually a desire by citizens. Today, there's a lot of citizens that want to do this. So it was a response to that as well. Thus far, we have created more than 1,000 cohabitations. Our participants, 71.5%, have found suitable housing solutions since after, and then 45.3% found a job during the intake compared to 31.1%, and then 42.4% have pursued, training or returned to school, and so it just kind of gives them the calm. I like the Belgian word for it, the calm, so they could go and pursue whatever projects they need to in order to move forward in society. Our demographics, basically, this is like before the Ukrainian crisis, but it was 68% men, 21% women, and 11% children. As you know, the journey to Europe from countries outside of Europe is much tougher. And so a lot of times women and children aren't able to make that journey. However, with the Ukrainian crisis, this has changed. We don't have the statistics yet, but we have more women and more families now. And then as you can see, just some other information, 82% single people, 6% couples, 12% families, but this is also changing. And this is really important for us to know because it allows us to know how we need to match people as well. And then, you just have an age demographic there. Today, we are present mostly in France, strong presence in France and in Brussels. But with the support of the Ministry of Housing, we are developing in 7 new cities, particularly because there's this need due to the Ukrainian crisis. And we are also working beyond France and sharing our methodologies with operators and organizations in Hungary, Romania, Moldova, Switzerland, Italy, Croatia. And this has been a pretty exciting period for us because we're actually quite proud of our methodology and we've been working to fine-tune it, but it's really a work in progress. And that's something that I actually want to share with you during this presentation. So how does this work? Basically, if you are interested in hosting, you go onto our website and you fill out an online form, and you inform us as to what motivates you to do this. For us, it's really important to know the motivation of our hostees, because it's quite an undertaking. And the fact that we don't search people, we prefer that they come to us, because to make that effort to come to us means that you want to do this, right? So that's the first thing that we do. Afterwards, we have an informational meeting, and we share with them everything that we offer. Basically, we tell the hostees and the hosted about our program, the support that we offer, some preliminary trainings on multiculturalism, because that's really quite an important issue, and we also have interviews with them. So it's really like we pre-screen, we try to select the profiles we think that would be the most, let's say, adapted for this type of program. And that is an extremely important part. And that's why we can't be an emergency response, because this process takes time and we have to hold their hand every step of the way. The matching. So we once we have a list of people that have manifested their interest to host, and a list of hostees, we try to match them based on common interests, work, studies, maybe French courses, but really like to try to find a matching that will be good for the person coming out of a often very difficult situation, and also the person that's hosting, so there's fluidity in their relationship. And like I'll give you an example. For instance, if we have like a younger someone between the age of 18 and 25, oftentimes what we'll try to do is match them with families, because at that time in their life they probably need so the comfort of a family or a more sturdier framework. It's not always the case, depending on also the maturity level of the person. But for the most part, that's what we try to do. However, like there are also people that are very independent, and so we'll try to match them with someone who might not be in Paris because they have a very crazy professional life. However, they have a great social network, and I mean, we've had, you know, situations where, you know, they'll go on a weekend together, and then but the hostee is not home most of the time, so the other person feels like they have their autonomy as well. So it's quite a process, and we learn so much every day about this whole process. Motivations and expectations. We really ask them from A to Z, you know, what they want, what they're looking for, what their expectations are. And also during this time, and a bit in the informational meetings, what we try to do is also deconstruct the, I wouldn't say prejudices, but kind of like some of the ideas that the hosties might have about what hosting might be too, because I think when we have crises like the Ukrainian crisis, there's so much emotion, you know, they want to do so much, and they have, and it comes from a good place. But what we try to do is kind of calm them on the kind of the hero feeling, because we want this to be equal, we want this to be leveled, and we don't want the other person to feel like too much of as a victim either, you know. And so, and what we try to explain to them too is that, okay, you're helping, but also you're getting a lot from this. And then, yeah, as you can, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If there's like a common professional activity and stuff, that's also very helpful. But I think you get the gist, so I'll move forward. I have 2 slides left. Don't worry, Joanna. Okay, the first meeting is really important. So what we try to do is find a neutral place, a place where both of them feel safe, and a place where they feel equal, so they could kind of, you know, test the waters, get to know each other, and so after this first meeting, they will come back to us and tell us, you know, how they felt, if it's a go, if it's a no-go. If they feel comfortable, what we do is afterwards, we ask the hostee to share a picture of the space that the other person will live in. And I think this is quite powerful, because a lot of times when newcomers come, it's like they're thrown into these like what we call foyer in France. And I mean, I've seen these places, like they're just terrible. Nobody asks them if they're comfortable. Nobody cares. So I think it's a good gest to have, and it makes them feel comfortable, and it makes them feel considered. And then sometimes, you know, after the first meeting, it doesn't work out, and that's fine. What we'll usually do then is we'll try to make another match. We're almost like Tinder. And if there's a second meeting, then what we'll do is have the hostee have the potential hosted visit the home or the apartment. All right. Oops. And then in terms of decision making, I think that, so once we make our decision, what we do is we set the guidelines. It's really important. So basically we have a charter of cohabitation. We provide intercultural training. We try to, in the beginning when we started this, we had a few crises, and we've learned from those crises, and we try to manage them better. And I think the more you anticipate and the more you prepare the beneficiaries of this program in advance, the more tools you give them, it helps avoid any miscommunications or crisis situations. Of course, we follow up. So as soon as they start the project, during the project, and we make sure that everything is going well. And at times we even have, we bring together all the hosts and hostees in the same city to discuss experiences, so people can understand, you know, what other people are experiencing, as well as to share I mean, I think sharing experiences is really important for us too, because there's so many specificities that just go through, or sometimes incomprehensions that are centered on intercultural misunderstandings. You'd be surprised, you know. I have a funny story about one woman who was getting irritated because her hostee was kind of leaving the water faucet on a little bit, so it was just like, you know, streaming a little at the end, and she was just like, she couldn't take it. And then at one point we involved a mediator to kind of understand what's going on, and they had a talk about it. And basically the woman that she was hosting was from Siberia, and the reason she leaves the water on is because the water in Siberia, it freezes, and so you have to leave the water going. I mean, we have situations like that. It's funny. Take off your shoes, don't take off your shoes, you know, handshake. I mean, it's but I think that what's really beautiful about these experiences too is that the people hosting, they ask themselves like, okay, you know, I've grown up with these like cultural habits, but to what extent are those habits, you know, learned through my socialization in this country? And maybe there's other ways of living too. And what's beautiful about this program is that it really creates cohesion. It really creates openness. And I mean, we had one participant who wrote a book about the experience, which is really powerful. I think they're even making a movie about it. So, and then afterwards, communication. Communication is key. And if there is ever a problem, we do have a professional mediator that either the hostee or the hosted can speak to. And if the situation escalates ever, what we do with the teams is we have two people that will speak to both of them to try to understand, and then we'll, depending on the situation, we'll try to make a decision on what to do. We had situations where we do sometimes change people from one home to the other because it's not too serious, but sometimes it just doesn't work out, and that's fine. But what we try to do is just stay vigilant and make sure that everyone feels safe. And so I think what's really important to take out of this is the fact that accompanying both participants in this experience is extremely important, providing them with the right tools. And also on our side, you know, taking note of all the mini crises is really important, and fine-tuning our strategy, because we're dealing with human beings, they're not like machines. And so it's like today in France, you know, maybe even the cultural context, like maybe in France there's a certain way of hosting, but maybe in Hungary or in Romania, like there are other cultural differences. And I think what's strong about Singa is that we have 10 years of experience in interculturalism. So we're quite aware of it, and we know what to anticipate, but we are still learning because we're changing animals, you know? And so I'm just going to make sure I covered everything that I wanted to say. Yes, I guess perhaps just to end, what I want to say is that, well, I read somewhere that the greatest nations are defined by how they treat their weakest inhabitants. And up until now, I think that states and NGOs have tried to respond to different issues related to the migration phenomenon. I think today that if we want to build solidarity, if we want to build cohesion, if we want to build healthier democracies, implicating citizens in this process is extremely important. And I'm speaking from my personal experience, but I I grew up with an Afghan community. My family's originally from Afghanistan, and I grew up as an American, but I remember that every time a newcomer came, whether it was from the family or within the community, there was a community that was there to help them, even if like the welfare state in the US was very weak. And I remember I even facing other newcomers, even if we shared a common culture, I was still different because I was a local. And so it's like, I remember in the beginning, I was like, oh, like, who is this? And why is she so weird? And my mom was like, it's your cousin, be quiet, you know? Like after going through this experience at a young age repeatedly, I realized there were so many things that I was learning from them and that I was teaching them as well. And that was something that was ingrained in me since I was a child. Now imagine if we were a bigger diaspora and we all did that. I mean, can you imagine the possibilities? So I just want to end with that. Thank you so much for your attention and for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful presentation. Mathilde, would it be possible to pin all the speakers so we can have a quick, but a discussion? Because I know we are over time, but still, this is an opportunity. There's great people in the room, so let's take that opportunity. Do you want me to help you pin everybody? I'm going, so spotlight. Rosella, you're there. Elisa, do you want to put the camera? Oh, Ivana, I see you. Okay. Are we all there? I think so. First of all, thank you all. Really, it's super interesting, and really all these different levels, right? From the local and regional experiences that inform policy making, which then nurtures practices and personal experiences as well. What resonated a lot with me was this thing that for Singa, because this was the last presentation, but what resonated with me is the fact that actually in a way you're slowing down in the beginning to be able to accelerate the impact. So that's why I'm slowing down here as well. I'm just taking this momentum. What would be for you, and any one of you can answer, what would be for you the main challenges ahead or the main opportunities you see to build more inclusive cities at the moment? What do you see as the main challenges or opportunities? The perspective that you would like to have? Eleonora, you seem to want to speak. You were moving towards
you read my mind. Actually, yes, I was thinking also following up on Fatimi's very interesting presentation. I think the challenge really, it's a fine line. The challenge it's really striking some sort of balance between community-based and sort of grassroots informal solutions and structural solutions, because clearly I think what we experience is that informality is what really works best. And by informality, I mean community-based initiatives, the diaspora communities getting more involved, employers or simply friends finding accommodation for a newcomer and so on. But at the same time, we also understand that we need more structural, long-term and also state-based or authority-based solutions, both because this is what we should strive for, and this is also what is just, what should be done. So I guess it's really a fine line between what works best and what we should still strive to achieve, and this is the challenge, I think.
So also about role, about governance, about who should do what in the different levels of governance. Ivana, Fatima, do you want to speak to that?
So I agree. I think that I think we have to break silos. You know, I think it's again, it's multidimensional, and I think everyone can play a role here. And so I think engaging citizens today could be a solution, but I agree with Eleleonora in the sense that it has to be structured. Like what we personally experienced was that during this Ukrainian crisis, a lot of organizations came and said, "Oh, we could do citizen housing." But so we're working with the French government right now, and they encountered so many problems because, for instance, within JECA, we don't put women with men. Like there's certain things that we avoid to avoid problems, you know, and that needs to be structured, and we need to give people tools. So I completely agree. I think there's a structural part. I think there's a part where we could be more flexible, and sometimes I think when we're working with institutions, we don't have that flexibility. But that's why social entrepreneurs are so important in this discussion, and they need to be included in the policy debates as well. And then lastly, I think another hurdle and challenge for me is changing the narrative, changing perception. And the beautiful thing about what we're doing is that through each connection that we make, we change the host's perception. And if today we don't have a country that is open, a population that is open to this, it's going to be really hard to put in place, you know, the policies needed, because I mean, a lot of times policies are also a demand of the population as well. So I think those are the two things I see.
Thank you very much. Ivana, you seem to want to speak.
I have a personal comment. In fact, in my view, the biggest challenge is unity and courage. And I say this because I think this webinar with housing has showed that there is a pattern that would close the circle. I mean, there are experiences, actions, policies that bring together all levels of governments. Yesterday afternoon, the Committee of Ministers has adopted a recommendation, which is a legal instrument recommending member states, 46 states, to implement intercultural integration strategies rather than other kinds of strategies to pursue inclusion, and to do this in a multi-level manner. Fantastic. We have been working 2 years on that. The thing is that we have lived the pandemics. We are living a war. There are several wars in the world, but this is a war in Europe. It doesn't make it more important, but it makes it more relevant for the European states. And at the same time, we have 3 years to save the planet. So I don't think there is much choice. We have seen in crisis, when we had the pandemics, the first months were great moments of unity. In all the tragedy, humanity was facing the same bad circumstances, let's say like this, and there has been a tremendous set of creativity, solidarity that came out. I tend to look always to the positive. So this has triggered a lot of action that we were not used to, because sometimes we forget we are humans, and we forget the lessons that we should learn from history. So now we have the climate, which is very much related to housing. We need to intervene on inclusive housing also to address the climatic situation and the situation of the planet. And then we have the war, which is also, sorry to say, but in a way, an opportunity to show what we as society want to pursue. And so I really hope we are gonna shake the citizens now, in my view, is the moment of the citizens to act and ask for all these instruments to be implemented, and for all the leaders to show the courage they must have to lead their democracies.
Thank you so much. And yeah, courage definitely is difficult. It's something that I think we can all relate to. So thank you for mentioning that. It's very difficult. After Rosella, did you want to say something?
Just to complement, I agree with all the inputs just collected, but I was also thinking a nice word that I heard today is, or the perception I have, that the concept of cohabitation is very important, because from the public space in the interculturalism, it's from Ivana, but also from the good practices Eleonora mentioned, but also Baba's story and Singha expertise is in line with the idea that we should connect both sides. And I really appreciated this approach. It is also true that I believe that the most challenging issue is the, long-term perspective. It seems very difficult for all the actors involved to think about this aspect, but I'm, let's say, quite optimistic that maybe we can again use the crisis, the ongoing ones, to change and to become, more proactive in implementing changes, because it's clear from today also our webinar, there are so many actions in place. So thank you, colleagues.
Thank you so much. So we'll stay with those words, with courage, with perception, cohabitation, learning to know each other, and also maybe unlearning things, and being able to see ourselves act also when we feel things are strange, and acknowledge that and look into that, and slow down to be able to accelerate, be aware of the process. There's a link in the chat for a survey. It helps us to know if anyone in the room wants to share good practices for the next webinar, which will take place on 24th of May on access to education. We will send it also. And another point that I wanted to mention very quickly is on 14th and 15th of June, we will have a workshop in Venice. It will be around creativity, human potential, and inclusion, of course. And so you're all very welcome to come to Venice with us. I think that's a nice way to end. Thank you very, very much to all our wonderful speakers, and to all of you who were there in the room, shared inputs in the chat, and thank you for still being there. You're awesome. Thank you so much. Take care.
Don't hesitate to send questions if any of the participants are curious or.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Thank you for organizing.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Ciao.
Ciao.